2021 operating budget as follows. Reduce the tax support from $4,772,317 to $4,621,412, representing a 1% decrease in the revenue from tax from 2020, and the total operating expenses be adjusted accordingly without a reduction in services, and the draft operating budget be referred to the Strategic Planning Committee for further discussion and recommendation.
All right, is there other discussions or comments? Councillor Pogmiller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple of items that I would like some answers to, or have administration find the answers for. A number of times I have asked for a detailed list of council expenses, and I've never received it, or we've never gotten them for quite a while. And I know I've asked about them several times. I was told they'd be at our workshop, but I didn't see them there. And I'm not talking a gross number. I just like it by person and by item that's been done, like we used to get. Another question I have is, this budget, the way it's presented, exactly what is the impact on taxation as far as property taxes go? And one more item or question I have is, when does the public get to have input on this? Is this just a first reading and then the public has input on it at the next time? Or how does that work? I would like some clarification on that too. Thank you.
Ethan, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, and those are good questions. So what I would recommend at this point is that the budget be accepted as information at this point, and so that it'll be posted on the website, and the public will have the opportunity to provide any input that they want. And I do have some. And then with regards to, with the recommendation with regards to tackling just the revenue side of it, or with that, it creates a system where what you want to do is you want to have council look at their level of service and have that as a discussion, which then informs the budget, which then informs how much revenue you need to collect that revenue. And so, which then would be a work for the Performance Evaluation Committee to review some of that level of service and come up with recommendations to find some of those savings. Because if by simply just reducing a certain budget number, then you put administration in the position of reducing levels of service, and those decisions are better made by council and with recommendations by the Performance Evaluation Committee. So, but at this point, I would recommend that the budget just simply be accepted as information, and then there can be a period of review and consideration and some thought. And if at this point council wants the Performance Evaluation Committee to specifically look at some levels of service, then that direction could certainly be given as well.
But Councillor Moore?
Yes, I would be a lot more comfortable with accepting it as information than wholesale just whacking off 1%. Without really having looked at the consequences or levels of service before we do that. It may be that eventually we get to something like that, but I agree that looking at it first and carefully examining what it is we want to do would be the way I'd like to approach this, rather than starting with cuts. I know we've done that before, but I do want to have more time to go through this.
I'm interested in that because we have had this budget for 3 weeks, and we went through the workshop on the 27th, and we've had opportunity to go through it. And the motion that administration put forward is to adjust the 2021 operation budget and give it back to the strategic planning committee. So I don't know, Ethan, that that's the right order that it goes to performance evaluation. Maybe it goes to both at the same time. But we're sitting here on April 13th, and we've had it for 3 weeks. So I know there were some questions out of the budget workshop that I had asked to come back to this meeting. And I'd also expected that when we're talking about the money and the service level, there's two committees that'll deal with that. So I have a few questions, and one of them a few of them I asked at the operating budget workshop on March 27th. And I might say that we've been very clear that the budget will be presented for 2 weeks after tonight. And I don't think we should put off any of our motions for public input, because the public input will come back the same time our committee input will come back after they go to the committees. So the survey was intended to be our marker for input into what we're expecting. And so when we do post it, again, that'll happen, that the public does have that opportunity, and the council committees have the opportunity to come back together at the same time with those directives. So I don't see putting it off for 2 weeks as being productive, and when we could get started on items. I'd like to ask, I asked about the percentage of FCSS grants, like the allocation, the split that we are actually providing department versus grants that we're providing. I did ask that at the workshop. And I don't know if Amanda wants, or you want to answer these one by one, or you want me to ask? I don't want to ask them all together. So how would you like to deal with that?
And you can keep asking. I don't have that answer tonight.
Okay, so I'll ask that one. And then I asked in the water, when there was the recommendation to put away $500,000 into reserves, and I asked if that was the best approach right now, when if we debenture the reservoir for what we're estimating right now, the number is 4 million. So we affect our water rates right now and increase them and not be offset as a break even or close to break even with the waste, and is it solid waste or wastewater that we were going to try to break even with?
All of the utility departments break even.
So I asked, why would we put away 500,000 and increase rates, and then when we debenture, we increase? There's going to be an increase from the debenture onto our tax and onto our operational budget load. So can I have that answer back?
Well, we're not actually increasing the rates. Like it's a net between water and wastewater, because you're actually off putting the reserve from wastewater for a few years and reserving it in water instead.
Yeah, but you said that the water rates are going to go up, but they're going to go up more than what they balance.
And the wastewater rates would go down.
Right, but
then there's other budgetary impacts in the water department, like repairs and maintenance and things like that, that cause the rates to go up higher than that.
I understand that. I'm just the $500,000 transfer to reserves is what I'm questioning, if it needs to be that much right now to affect the water rates like that. And if that answer can come back as to the debenture, and I did ask it 3 weeks ago. So if our debenture is going to impact our residents as well going up with rates that tax rates, then is it worth it to increase water rates and then increase tax rates? And is there a way to figure out, this reservoir has been on the books since 2006. So there's many opportunities for councils to put money away. And I, as much as this council's done a good job of that, and in particular the RCMP reserve, that we didn't impact our residents, but $500,000 all at once seems extreme to me. and if I could just have that answer back at the next meeting, I would appreciate that. And then I asked I did mention to council about user fees. In our town halls, we heard that we're going to be needing to contribute somehow to helping our youth groups recover from the pandemic and their fundraising not being able to happen. But the revenue side of that would be substantial, and I still see the revenue side with the pandemic going until July. I wonder if that's being realistic with the revenue side of our recreation. And my comment about decrease in user fees, I certainly will draw, because I think we've come up with a good idea of alternative in the community grant program. So that'll be discussed, item 7.10. Those are my comments, but I also want to, I'll let somebody else speak first, because if they have any questions or comments, obviously we'll give the floor to whoever would like other questions. Councillor Moore?
One thing I'm not sure of, in the discussion options section, it says that the requirement is 2.1% increase in revenue. Do we have any indication at this point as to how much our assessment has changed from last year as far as the assessment property? Is it perhaps up a percentage or two as well? No?
No, there's been a drop in assessment. As everyone probably noticed, residentially, it dropped about an average of 5%. So there's a very high decline, which is consistent across most residential, like all residential properties though. So
okay, so the commercial increase in taxable properties hasn't even come close to making up for that, right?
I don't have the percentages off the top of my head, but I can bring it, like that'll be discussed with the tax rate discussion.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know, is if how our assessment would affect that, because that by itself doesn't really give me the answer of what it's going to affect, how it's going to affect our tax rate.
The tax rates will go up, even if the tax revenue stayed the same, because we are seeing a decrease in our assessment.
Thank you.
I just don't have the percentage off out right now, but I can bring it for you, council.
Sure. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. I just want to make a comment, and I think it's probably reasonable for me to explain a little bit as to why I made the motion I did. And in a time when we're struggling through a pandemic, and both residential and business are struggling here, this is not the time to be raising taxes. This is the time to at least hold taxes the same, or if we can, to give our taxpayers a little bit of relief. And that's the reason I went the direction I did, because it just seems to me that during this time, when there are so many that are struggling financially, that this is just not the time to be raising taxes.
Thank you, Councillor Windsor. Councillor Pogmiller?
I would like to echo what Councillor Windsor said, because I firmly believe the same thing. But this is people are struggling, businesses are struggling. I think we need to do what we can do. So I want to echo what he said. Thank you.
And I just have a few other comments. I know the council back on December 8th, I believe it was, approved. We approved one adjustment to salary and wages to add to the salaries and wages, and that was $12,750 for the municipal internship program. But our salaries and wages have gone up $166,000. So I'm not in favor of that at all. I know that our community needs road rehabilitation and attention. And I looked back at our MSP options, and the road rehabilitation for $650,000 could have done 3 times as much work as we've done in the past year by year, We also have 19th Street and 20th Street that are in a mess, and they were part of the options for repair. So our community's telling us that we need road work. And I would suggest and support that we adjust the salaries and wages to just reflect the $12,750 that council approved, and that the other $153,500 go into our road rehabilitation program. And that, together with the GTF increase that we saw, our GTF doubled this year, and I'm confident that this year would give us close to $679,000 for road rehabilitation. And I think that is something, we're in a huge deficit for roads, and that goes back years and years, and this council's been trying to catch up with that with our road rehab program and our, Craig's great guidance with his criteria and in selecting roads for capital. So I'm going to add that to Councillor Windsor's motion. I think that unless Councillor Windsor withdraws it, but there's nothing wrong with having a motion to act on. It's not in stone. It's to get more information back and to review those items accordingly. So I will add to his motion if he doesn't mind. I'll make an amendment.
I'll consent to that. Mayor Hunter, I'll consent to that.
Comments on that, if I may, Your Worship.
Sure.
So first of all, the salaries and wages, just so that everyone understands, there's been no increases, no performance increases, no cost of living increases. We've frozen all of that. There's been none of that happening. What the salaries and wages reflects is, so first of all, that added intern that council approved, the full wage is going to be reflected in the salaries and wages, but there's no revenue that offsets most of that. So it's not, you can't just simply reduce the salaries and wages increase to 12,500. The rest of that reflects service level direction that we're trying to capture based on direction council's given. So all of these, it's not about salaries and wages or any one line. It's all about levels of service, and obviously the budget can always be whatever council wants it to be based on what level of service that council would like to see for any given type of service. And what I would recommend is that the Performance Evaluation Committee is the one best suited to come up with recommendations for where reductions to certain levels of service can be made to find the savings in the budget that council is looking for.
And then where would the strategic planning, the budget committee fit in that then?
Their role is with regards to translating that with recommendations for instance, the splitting of the tax rates between the business and the residential, as well as finding, making decisions or recommendations with regards to the amount in the contingency or certain budgetary areas that are more financial in nature, perhaps recommendations with regards to council budget items. But with regards to the larger kind of level of service discussions, that is more the purview of the Performance Evaluation Committee.
So then this motion could, sorry if I just could finish, Councillor Pogmiller, this motion then we'll make this motion and refer it to the Performance Evaluation Committee with the numbers that we present here, is how I would see that happening then. Because this council should direct what we'd like the Performance Evaluation Committee to look at, just like we direct what we'd like the Strategic Planning or the Policy and Governance Committee to look at. I believe I'm correct with that. Councillor Pogmiller?
So my question is to Councillor Windsor, if you could read your motion or give us your motion one more time with any inclusions that have been talked about, just so that we all understand what exactly we're going to be voting on here, please, and thank you.
I have additions to your motion, so you can go first. Which is, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. I think do this way. Okay, so I'll try to slow this down a bit so that I don't lose anybody, okay? And so I will move that council direct administration to adjust the 2021 operating budget as follows. To reduce the tax support from 4,772,317 to 4,629,412, representing a 1% decrease in revenue from tax from 2020. And the total operating expenses be adjusted accordingly without a reduction in service. And the draft operating budget be referred to the Performance Evaluation Committee for further discussion and recommendation.
And would you mind a friendly amendment?
And the amendment that Mayor Hunter is going to add.
So again, I would, well, go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah. So I would like to adjust the salaries and wages as for the municipal internship program. So whatever that is, adjust the wages, and the remainder of those salaries and wage increase for this year goes to the road rehab program. So I guess that'll have to be sorted out. And then my two other ones that I have I looked at Carstairs' budget last night. I was really quite impressed, but I also noticed that Carstairs Campground makes $83,000 in revenue, $89,000 in revenue. So I would like the committee to explore ways to increase revenue to the campground, challenge administration to explore ways. And I would like to adjust the transfer reserves for water to make it a break-even situation or minimal increase for cost of water increase. So to look at that, how that'll affect our water rates and the impact on our users. So if it can be adjusted from 500,000 to still provide a palatable reserve for this year. And if I want to add one thing, I see your hand, Councillor Engel. I just want to add one thing, and that's I know that we have a debenture getting paid off next year too. So I know it's not huge, but it's about $94,000. It'll be freed up, and that can also help towards future reserves for the water. And having said that, those are my amendments. Councillor Winslow, if you'll accept them, and Councillor Engel, go ahead.
Would it not be easier to, like Ethan said, accept this as information and send those the recommendations that have been made tonight, to send those back for the consideration of the the Performance and Evaluation Committee? Because being on the committee, it sounds like I'm being directed to make those things happen, and I would like to examine how they could happen.
I think the motion is to explore them.
Yeah, so I was misunderstanding.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I think. They need to be brought back to that committee, and to look at those items that are listed. Absolutely.
Okay. So, and I'll just speak as a point of process. So, because in Councillor Windsor's motion, it included the wording without any change to level of service, and that's
Yeah.
because the budget represents a level of service. So it'd be like saying you want to reduce your grocery bill but have the same amount of groceries that you had before reducing your bill, and it's impossible to not reduce your level of service if you reduce your budget. And so I would recommend is if it's specifically 1% of savings that you're looking for, that you task the performance evaluation committee, that you keep it broad enough and you ask them to explore ways that they can recommend reductions to level of service to find that 1% with that and that they can do the legwork of exploring some potential options they can bring back to council to find that 1% savings.
Councillor Moore?
Yes, I agree with the perspective that Councillor Engel is suggesting, but I also have a question regarding the wages. I'm wondering if we are including the professional economic development officer in the wages that we're showing, as well as the total amount of the intern, even though we're getting grants for part of it. So is it also including an economic development officer for part of the year? To Ethan or Amanda.
So that's why again I recommend any motion that specifically states where it comes from, because it's a level of service isn't tied to any specific. It's the bigger picture level of service, and not so simple to kind of manipulate a specific budgetary line item, because that has all kinds of implications. And really where council should be making decisions is on their level of service, which then informs all those other line items and automatically.
So Councillor Windsor, the motion will still, I believe, still stand and explore these items plus any other the Performance Evaluation Committee would like to explore. And that covers that. I do believe the directive needs to come from council as to what we'd like to explore. And if the Performance Evaluation Committee explores any others, that's certainly obviously what they do. And just for historical sake, this council we've worked hard to keep our revenue from taxes manageable, and this is still a pandemic year, and our premier says that we're still in this until July, and we don't even know if that's a fact. It could be longer than that. So I enter this cautiously, that our taxes aren't going up, and that our attention to the pandemic and the restrictions it places on our revenues across the board to our facilities. And if we look at the actual revenues from last year in our budget, they were considerably impacted by the pandemic, and I don't know that will change this year a whole bunch. Councillor Engel?
So are we going to amend it then to remove the not reducing the level of service, because that's, I think, what we have to look at.
Explore reducing level of service, or not explore that, Councillor?
Just the way it was worded is that it was going to come back to council and that we needed to do this, this, and this. And we need that removed so that we explore and come back with recommendations to achieve that. But we get handcuffed when we're told we have to do this. Then I feel like committee has no power in it, because it's been sent back to I agree we shouldn't have an increase in taxes this year. I completely agree with that. But we have to be able to look at it and see where savings can be, and look at the recommendations I think the council is making to look at. But we maybe have to look further as well. That's I guess my point. So I don't want to kind of be handcuffed to not be able to look at other aspects or ways of reducing the impact on the taxpayer.
Councillor Windsor, thanks. Councillor Engel.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Hunter. I'm willing to make an adjustment to that, but I'm not going to take it out. I would be willing to change it to minimizing reduction in services. I'm willing to change that to a minimizing the reduction of services. I don't want a wholesale reduction in services right across the board in order to carry forward some things that might be considered to be luxuries right now. And I want to minimize that. I want to focus on what is really important to the town and what services are critical to carry forward with the town. And those ones that are maybe luxuries this year and maybe things that should be afforded another year, not this year, those things to be the ones that are looked at to minimize, so, or to reduce. I just don't want to have a wholesale reduction of services. I would like to minimize the reduction of services in order to accomplish that goal.
Is that fair, Councillor Engel? And that, I think you captured in there the explore the GTF to add into that road rehab this year for that extra road rehab. So I think, are there any other additions to that or any other comments on it?
So just so that I'm clear, because there's been a lot of different things about this motion. So is Councillor Windsor removing, so he's removing the part about the zero level of service is decrease, as well as the targeted one about the salaries and wages? Is that?
I'm removing the without a reduction. I'm changing that to minimize the reduction of services.
Okay, so with that, I would still recommend that this motion be defeated, because again, it's not. What I would recommend is a motion that simply charges the committee to explore recommendations to find that 1% savings, and that's a motion I would recommend that council adopt.
I would disagree with that, Ethan, because it's common for directives to go back to committees, and their hands aren't tied with this. These are some of the things they'll explore, and they'll explore other things as well. But if there's an interest to pass this motion, they explore these things. No one's saying that they happen because it's up to the committee, but those are some things that this council would like them to explore and look at as part of the motion. So that isn't uncommon, and I think you hear that all the time, that we send things back to the strategic planning committee for this and to the performance or the policy and governance for that. We are directing them, but it's their findings that come back that we listen to and consider.
And that's fine. My only concern is just with the targeted amount of salaries and wages, it's missing. It's a philosophical, it's not correct philosophically, simply because salaries and wages in a budget simply reflects a service level that you want. And so the salaries and wages is whatever that level of service is. And so.
But Ethan, I don't want to debate that with you. This is up to council. So the motion's on the floor. And I think council, like I said, we've clarified if you pass the motion, it's directives or exploring items that we'd like you to look at, and whatever else you find to look at. So that's a fair request, I believe. Councillor Pogmiller?
There. Sorry about that. Thank you. Just to be clear, I am with Ethan on this because I see where he's going, and I'm going to vote against this, and I want a recorded vote on this one. Thank you.
So are there any other comments? Okay, I'll call the vote then. Do you want it read back? Anyone? You know what you're voting on? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's defeated. And who would like to make another motion then? Councillor Moore?
Chair, I'll make a motion that council move to send the to accept the 2021 draft operating budget as information and send it to the professional evaluation committee for further review.
The Performance Evaluation Committee?
Performance.
Oh, I'm sorry, performance, I apologize. And it's also going to be naturally posted on our website, right, for the public at this point, or when? Yes, okay, thank you.
Ethan did explain that earlier. Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. So Councillor Moore, you're making this motion without any direction from council whatsoever, just to explore it?
I think we all have the notes that people were talking about, and I think I can trust the committee to have them in hand as well.
Councillor Ingle?
Sorry, if I can suggest that, yeah, we take this as information and send it back to the committee, like Councillor Moore said, and I think have in there the items that the council tonight has said that they want looked at. I think that can be a part of it, if you're okay with that, Dorothy Moore, Councillor Moore. I shouldn't read the screen while I'm talking. My teleprompter's making me.
I've been called way worse than that. I don't know. I don't like to put in the specifics because I think they're very specific, and you might come up with other things. But I think that then, as with notes regarding some of the things that some of the councillors have discussed, I don't think we have council total agreement on all of them, but I think they are things that you can look at and see how they fit with what you know that council wants, which is no tax increase if possible and keep the service levels as good as we can.
Could we use the word explore? You like explore those ideas that were suggested?
Yes, if you would like that.
I would, because I think we do need to talk about them.
Okay, exploring them I'm comfortable with, so I would certainly add that. How would you like it amended, Councillor Engel?
Oh, I think yeah, just to take it as information, send it back to the Performance and Evaluation Committee and have them review the suggestions or the explore the suggestions that were made tonight. I don't have the list in front of me.
Easy for you to say. Okay, to explore the suggestions that were made tonight. I will add that to the motion. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Kogler.
Yes, thank you. I would also like to make it clear that we would, on that committee, then it would be expected that they would also explore any other possibilities that could arise out of that. And also, I'm going to again ask for a recorded vote on this. Thank you.
I'm just interested in what is different about this motion then than the one that was just defeated. So what is the different wording in there that I'm missing? If I could have clarification on that. So we just listed a whole bunch of items to take back to the committee, and now that's defeated. Now there's another motion to take that stuff back to the committee. So what am I voting on? What are we all voting on that's different? If I could ask that for clarification. Councillor Engel or Councillor Moore?
As far as I'm concerned, what it is that it's taken as information instead of saying council move to adjust the budget as follows these things. that's a big difference as far as I'm concerned, and I am much more comfortable with taking it as information and exploring the possibility of doing that within the general parameters, which is, I think, our job at this point, that tax increases are not something we want to do, and that oh shoot, we want to keep the service levels as close to what they are now as possible.
Well, that sounds like the very same motion. So the only word that was missing was information, and it was exploring. So I don't know what to vote because I guess I'll vote for because it's the same. To me, it's the same as the last motion. And it's sending the same information back. So I will put that there for a vote unless there's any other comments. Councillor Baswick?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just thinking that the difference is that as opposed to what appeared to be a directive of council to do something, in that committee to do something, as opposed to giving the committee the freedom to explore. Those are two different things to me. So, and I don't think it's prudent to direct any committee to do something directly. They can be advised to explore certain issues, but definitely not told what to explore, or pardon me, or how to do it. That's my comment on that.
Okay, so I guess it's interpretation at this point. So we have a recorded vote on this item to accept the budget as information. And Luana, can you repeat it, please?
All right, so moved by Councillor Moore to accept the 2021 draft operational budget as information, and that it be referred to the Performance Evaluation Committee, looking at and exploring the suggestions that were made.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we have item 7.2, council compensation. Do we have a motion? Yes. Councillor Moore?
I wasn't planning on moving this one, but being that no one else did, I move that council approve the recommended changes as presented commencing at the start of the next term in accordance with the council remuneration policy COUN-004.
Any discussion on that? Councillor Ingle?
I guess the only suggestion I'd like to make is that we make the change effective immediately.
I would be okay with that if that's what the rest of council would like. I would amend my motion then.
And if I could, is there any questions? I'd also like to defer. I'd like to accept it as information. I'd like to ask that all of the information be reviewed. I do believe the only thing that was reviewed was the monthly remuneration, not the per diems and the travel and subsistence and the benefits and the training and I've just been doing a lot of looking around and that's all that came back to us was our remuneration for monthly. And when I look at all the other municipal council budgets, all of them are relative to what you make, like the remuneration. So, you know, the per diem, for example, Carstairs gets $360 a day. Disbury gets $250. and Olds gets a certain amount. So is that something, that's something I'd like to know, and I think that would all go hand in hand with the package. And I'm not taking away at all from our committee. I think they did excellent work. I just don't think they were given the instruction to do anything besides remuneration, the monthly remuneration. And I could be wrong. Ethan, you could clarify that. Councillor Windsor first, and then.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. I'm thinking that if council is wanting to go that direction, I wonder if it wouldn't be appropriate to go back to our remuneration committee and ask them if they would be willing to do a complete evaluation with those other items included in the evaluation.
I would amend my motion. I think that's a great idea, Councillor Windsor, and I would be perfectly willing to amend my motion to have that we accept the recommended changes as far as they go, and refer this item to the Performance Evaluation Committee for further review. Would that address your item, Councillor Windsor?
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. Councillor Moore, I guess what I'm talking about is the remuneration committee that we had, Mr. Blatz and Ms. Nolan and Mr. Whittle, and have them do the complete evaluation rather than the performance evaluation committee. I think that the remuneration committee should be given the opportunity to go forward and complete their task. And not that they would want to, maybe they don't want to. I just thought maybe it would be prudent to ask them.
Councillor Crothers, I agree with Councillor Windsor. Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
You just took the words out of my mouth. I agree with Councillor Windsor.
Yeah, I think more information, because it's not comparing apples to apples when you're only comparing the monthly remuneration, and I think Councillor Baswick said it best that everybody works hard here, and is it all balanced across the board? And I think that's, I can work 40 to 50 hours a week, and I think another councillor said, how are we ever going to entice the young and involved and that demographic if we're not on par with everyone? And I think so. The full rounded interrogate review, I think, is fair, and I'm glad I looked up those other budgets, because I think that would be the best approach for our council too. And I always say, do we, and I'm not saying we are right now the cheap cousin, but let's be fair across the board with our council, because we do want to attract those people that want to be involved.
I would like to hear if Ethan has more to say. I'm perfectly willing to adjust that. I think that these ideas are all good.
So is that through the chair, Councillor Moore? You'd like to hear Ethan?
Yes, it is. That's why I'm asking you.
Thank you. So Ethan, would you like to respond to Councillor Moore?
Sure, yeah. And I think you had asked it also earlier, Mayor. So the parameters of their review was simply just on the general principles of your remuneration, and so the more nuanced review that would require kind of a new motion requesting that they do kind of that additional work.
So Councillor Moore, would you like to, you have amended it a few times, so what is the final amendment that you'd like to
I think
make?
I'll start all over again.
Okay.
So I think that we'd like to thank them for their time and efforts, and ask if they might continue their review to address per diem and other benefits or remuneration. It sounded like and that's the motion, but it sounded like they had some of that information but didn't go into it. So I'm hoping that it isn't going to be a a huge and terrible job for them.
Is Councillor Baswick standing on his head right now? I see his
Yes.
legs. Okay, he's not. I saw your feet in the air, Councillor Baswick. Okay. We have the motion. Luana, do you want to read it back? I feel for you tonight.
Moved by Councillor Moore, the council thank the council compensation committee for their time and efforts and accept the report as information, and that it be referred back to the council compensation committee to address other benefits and remuneration. I wanted to clarify if that remuneration included, was that per diem or the hourly?
Well, it's per diems are
It's,
hourly.
isn't it?
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
per diem rates. I thought the per diem rate should be added in the motion.
Yes.
And if I think the benefits, many
Yes, I have
councils get
benefits.
benefits, remuneration, travel and subsistence, training, telecommunications, public relations, staff relations, memberships. Just go crazy with it. Yes.
All those things I've added to my motion.
And we'll have staff gather as much of this as they can so that the committee's role is to review the info, so they're not having to spend a bunch of time gathering it. So.
Okay. I think we're ready for the vote unless Councillor Engel has something to say.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say is I'm going to vote against this because we ask our staff to be in the 60% percentile, and we're above that. That's my reason. We can go into all that other stuff at any time. I'm just I think that we should be adjusting our base pay down to be in line with what we expect our administration to be paid. So that's my reason.
Councillor Moore?
Could we commit somehow within the motion to reduce the base pay to the amounts that they're expecting, but just look at the other things? Is that what I'm sort of thinking that we're prepared to accept the recommendation for the base pay, but now it sounds like Councillor Engel is thinking that we're not accepting that. So I don't think that was my intention, but was it not clear?
No, it wasn't clear to me. I also, that we might be in the 60% based on all those other items, is my point. So that's why I would vote to have it just all looked at and brought back, because 60% could be where we're at. If Carcer's getting $360 a day and we're getting $250, and that could balance out as well with how our pay is reflected. So I'd like to see the big picture personally and then make the decision. And I think we all agree 60% is where we'd like to be. Or I can say that for me, but maybe we are.
Through the chair, Ethan, I would like to know what Ethan thinks about whether or not this is something that is clear and what it is that we want. Is there another way that it could be stated so it's clear that we're accepting the reduction to the base pay and we're expecting the rest of it to be in that sort of 60 percentile to be clear?
And with the,
Well, I think that's not too fair to Ethan, though. It's up to council to make the decision on.
No, just wondering if the question is something that's clear.
yeah, the question, the additional info you're looking for is clear. By way of the decision you make, that's obviously a council call to make. I will just add this something to consider with this, because I understand the desire to want to show restraint and that leadership. There is a caution to the downside, I guess, the downside to adopting it before the end of the term, the downside to that is that it potentially can set up a thing, because the intention of the policy is to not have it be politicized. And that's why it always takes effect in the next term. And so that no term kind of bleeds over to the next. And the potential downside to doing action now is that it creates a framework that you could potentially politicize it, where these things start to be part of discussions that are being had in election years, and with different council members having different thoughts about that. And it potentially leads to some politicization, which is why it was always pushed to the next term, to try to take the politics out of those decisions. That's an administrative just recommendation for your consideration. I know that's not what anyone was thinking about in that way, but it's just something to be careful about with these kind of things as well. Just I wanted everyone to think of that.
So the motion is, Councillor Moore has been read. And I'm sorry, Luann, I'm going to have you read that back again.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Moore that Council thank the Council Compensation Committee for their time and efforts and accept the report as information, and that it would be referred back to the Council Compensation Committee to address other remunerations such as benefits and per diem rates.
And so any other discussion?
Just wondering if we could add a couple words in there, because I don't want to dismiss, even in the motion, the work that they did and that we accept it. Could it say as accept their report? And I don't know, is it good to say as information? And if it is, in addition to look at these other two things.
Councillor Baswick?
I just think it could be covered. Instead of picking one or two items, we could just say all other compensatory income to the counselor. So it includes the daily rate. That way it includes everything, and you're not leaving anything out. So you pretty well covered the actual monthly remuneration for counselors, and all the rest of it could be covered with a blanket statement, so that they look at all the things outside of that monthly remuneration. Daily rate, internet expenses. You know what I mean? So you cover it all rather than picking certain things. That's one thing I thought.
Thanks, Councillor Baswick. Councillor Crothers?
Yeah, it's just something I think we missed when I was trying to outline what we're trying to accomplish. At the end of the day, we want to accomplish that there is a proper cost recovery for councillors expensing things on behalf of the town. So that's what we're trying to do. And I think Councillor Baswick, that's part of the whole program. So if it's out-of-pocket expenses that are incurred by councillors.
We'll give them our Appendix C out of our remuneration policy. That would cover it. And that reiterates what Councillor Baswick said, but it's all there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So could we just then say maybe all other aspects of remuneration? Would that cover it?
Yes, I agree it would.
Oh, good.
So it will all come back. Information and then more information, except this is information, have more information come back. All right, I'll call the vote. We're a very intense and talkative group tonight, and I appreciate that. So, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, everyone. Well, let's hope we can get over this tax notice payment period quick and make up for some time. Councillor Crothers? Item 7.3.
Could I ask for a nature break for 3 minutes, please?
You can, yes. A 3-minute recess,
Thank you.
and we'll call a 3-minute recess.